Okay, tune into about page 423.
Oh my gosh, I'm on the right page.
Okay.
You're lucky Don wasn't
Okay. So approximately page 423. Okay. What we had on the schedule yesterday was the fossil record, and it says the same thing for that for today. So rather than being in your handout, I think for this, it just makes it much easier than to cover this as an extra amount of material here rather than trying to explain it in your handout. If we read it and write it up here, hopefully we can make more sense of that. Okay, so support for evolution. Darwin's book, The Origin of Species, demonstrated how evolution might happen. The book also provided evidence that evolution has occurred on our planet. The concepts of natural selection and evolution are different, okay? Though related. Okay, Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection is part of the larger theory of evolution. Recall that a theory provides an explanation for a natural phenomenon based on observations. Theories explain available data and suggest further areas for experimentation. The theory of evolution states that all organisms on Earth have descended from a common ancestor. So, when we look at it that way, what would you guess these are? A common what? No. No. We just said it. Common ancestor. Okay? So when we talk about your ancestors, maybe your individual ancestors, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents. Some of you, do you possibly have a family tree or a family historian that would say, we can trace our roots back to Ireland, back to Germany, back to, I almost said Danish, that's not right, Denmark or New Amsterdam, that is, there's two countries up there, one's Danish, which of course is Denmark. My geography isn't very good. Not Sweden and Norway, not Finland. Yeah, if they're Dutch, I know if you say they're Danish, is that New Holland? Is that a?
Yeah.
Yes, New Holland and then Denmark. Yes, I think those are two totally different countries. Okay. Are any of you Norwegian? A lot of you are probably maybe of German descent of some sort. It was explained to myself that a great, I don't know if it was great 3 times, I think so, was a sea captain that sailed across the ocean, okay? And it was a German name because it was Creutzfeldt, which is certainly German, okay? Sometimes you can tell some of the names, whether they're possibly German, Polish, Danish. I'm not very good at that, but let's see here. Who thinks they have a name that, my gosh, everyone that hears this name knows that I'm Danish or Norwegian. Okay? But okay, that would make sense. Okay? What about my last name then?
You sound Irish.
Yes, Irish. That's right. Okay? Bolshevik. Yeah. You said Russian, right? Okay. Okay. Well, I know, but that's why we say Bolshevik. Yeah. That means, or you say that sounds outlandish, skink.
What's that?
You put that extra suffix on there, it makes it sound Russian. Yeah. We try to do that. Sometimes when people think they sound smart, they're actually not. Okay? So, the fossil record then. The fossils provide a record of species that lived long ago. Oh, if we're talking about ancestors, what is the other direction? Ancestors means you're going back in time. Descendants means you're going forward. But in this case, you don't have any descendants yet. Why not? Because you have not had kids yet. Some of you are going to go on to be mothers, fathers, husbands, wives. It's just going to be a choice that you make. Okay. Fossils provide a record of species that lived long ago. They supply some of the most significant evidence of evolutionary change. The record can show how ancient species are similar to current species, as illustrated in Figure 4. Fossils also show that some of the species, such as a horseshoe crab, have remained unchanged for millions of years. The fossil record is an important source of information for determining the ancestry of organisms and patterns of evolution. Okay. Although Darwin recognized the limitations of some on the fossil record, he predicted the existence of fossils intermediate to form between species. Today, scientists studying evolutionary relationships have found hundreds of thousands of traditional fossils, excuse me, transitional fossils. I just need to quickly take a drink. Excuse me. Okay. Of transitional fossils that contain features shared by different species. For example, certain dinosaur fossils show feathers of modern birds and teeth and bony tails of reptiles. Shows an artist rendering of. This is one of the things. How do you know if or when you should correct someone? I don't have an answer for it. I just want to know what you think.
When they're mad.
When they're bad at explaining it.
Okay? So that very next word.
When the things they're putting down, you're not picking up.
Yeah, you're not picking up what they're putting down.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't make them wrong.
Sometimes. Most of
Well, it might, but it doesn't mean that they are. Okay?
the time.
Going back to this. What is that next word? Okay? So, okay. You know, oddly enough, a lot of you are not that far off. How do you know as a college student to possibly correct who your mentor is? That's not in this case. I'm using myself as a college student back many years ago, and this was the term. The teacher was always saying Archaeopteryx. Is there ever anything that someone says that you know is wrong that every time you hear it, it just infuriates you?
Brinley has a big problem with that. She's always yelling at us if we say
Presley
something.
can never say words right, and it makes me mad. So.
Okay.
Ask Presley.
Well, yes.
Personally, I'm pretty sure it's Archaeopteryx.
How did you know that? Is there a pronunciation there? I don't think so. Yeah, but Archaeopteryx. That's right. Okay. So, what about? We're going to go down to Brookings. Is that what you say? That's what you say?
What?
You're going to go down to Brookings?
I was gonna say, I don't say up.
I say let's go to the B is obviously
Yeah, I
sound.
don't say up or down. I only do that like when I'm talking about like different like
Okay. So, but anyway, the teacher kept saying Archaeopteryx, and I didn't make a big deal of it, but to me it just sounded kind of silly rather than saying the right word, which is Archaeopteryx. It's one of those things to where there's a way to do that rather than saying, you're saying that wrong.
You're saying this wrong.
Okay? Just said, excuse me, I might be incorrect, but I had learned this as it's called Archaeopteryx. That's how you want to approach things. Okay?
Is that how you did it? What did they say?
This was probably pretty close to 30 years ago. So
You don't remember? I mean, if you remember.
I don't. Maybe I wrote it wrong. Look at the spelling in your book and look what I have. Maybe I don't have it wrote down right.
The way you're saying it sounds like T-R-Y-X?
P T R YX. Okay.
I would have gotten
TRYX. I think that's what I said. TERYX. Okay. One of the first birds, the Archaeopteryx fossil, provided evidence of characteristics that classify it as a bird and also show the bird retained several distinct dinosaur features. Okay? So, we're going in here. Researchers consider two major classes of traits when studying transitional fossils: derived traits of ancestral traits. Derived are newly evolved features such as feathers that do not appear in the fossils of common ancestors. Ancestral traits, on the other hand, are more primitive features such as teeth and tails and do not appear in ancestral forms. Transitional fossils provide detailed patterns of evolutionary change for the ancestors of many modern animals, including mollusks, horses, whales, and humans. The odd part about that is, I don't know how to say this without being, I don't want to say rude, but thinking that you don't know the answer. Okay, which one of those would be the odd one out from the other three? It said mollusks, horses, whales, and humans.
No, what's up?
Mollusks are male.
The first ones.
Well, you could say, I always say humans, mammals, and then humans, but the reason that mollusks probably stand out from the other three is that mollusks are invertebrates, where the other actually have are vertebrates, because their skeleton is on the inside, not the outside. Although mollusks don't have a skeleton, they just have a shell. Okay. So comparative anatomy. Why do the vertebrate forelimbs shown in Figure 6 have different functions but appear to be constructed of similar bones in similar ways? Evolutionary theory suggests that the answer lies in shared ancestry. So very briefly, homologous structures, anatomically similar structures inherited from a common ancestor are called homologous structures. So in this case, okay, what we're referring to here when we talk about Archaeopteryx, we could say this is really complex because you could say it had these types of characteristics. And it also had these types. Okay, well, let's just keep this more simple. Okay? So one of these is going to feed into the other. So when we look at this, if this is our ancient ancestor, we said it had characteristics of both. Okay, so what had happened is that animals will change to meet the demands of their environment. But in this case, eventually what happened is you could say, even though these two are linked, I would venture to say that these totally moved on from there, and that's why we put them on this side. Because what do we know about the, let's say, the metabolism of any reptile?
There's not a lot of fat ones.
Well, that's true. I never thought of it that way. They are fast, but how long are they fast?
Short.
No. When I say how long in time, not distance.
10 seconds.
Oh, they're like short.
Huh?
Take a lot of damage.
Does anyone want to take a guess other than looking very similar? Do you suppose you might know what this means?
One flies, one doesn't.
No. These are cold-blooded. These, however, are warm-blooded. So what that means then, these animals are the same temperature as their surroundings. Okay? Not very beneficial for a high metabolism. These animals, on the other hand, when they are warm-blooded, it's one of those aspects they have to take in a constant amount of food. Yes?
So can any reptiles like make their own body heat?
No. Nope. Well, you mean by muscle contractions? Well, then, yes, they would create their own body heat, but they can't really sustain that from their surroundings, because once they possibly raise their core body temperature, it's going to go right out to the outside of their, because they don't have insulation like hair and fur like those do. That's why. Okay. So again, the heat for these means that it is within. Okay?
Russ has a lizard in his house. A gecko.
Who's got a gecko?
Yeah.
Gecko.
So, and it freaks out when it stays not under the light for a long time.
Okay.
So it freaks out when you pick him up and are like, hi, little guy.
No, because I was playing with it once and then it started freaking out and then it just ran under the light.
Okay. So eventually what would happen is we could say this line then totally separates them. And this would be a good way of looking at that, because those are warm-blooded, these are cold-blooded. For those of you who go on to take zoology, we go a little further in depth on what some of these reptilian characteristics are as opposed to avian. But at its most basic, the best physiological, does anyone think they might know the difference between a physiological function as opposed to an anatomical function? If you're going to study anatomy, what does that mean?
The human body.
Well, yeah, physiology has to study the human body too. But for instance, we could say that wings is an anatomical feature. Being warm or cold-blooded is a physiological feature. Those are two totally different types of ways of looking at things. Okay? So then, some of the anatomical characteristics of these, would you think that the bones inside of reptiles, are they hollow or solid?
Solid.
They're solid. Okay? So then, when animals started to take flight, okay, those bones had to become hollow, because if they didn't, there's no way you get off the ground, because the animal would just be too heavy. That's why you probably remember our conversation of the movie Pearl Harbor. How many of you have seen that movie? Okay? So when we talk about the Doolittle raid, that's actually pretty accurate. It was Colonel Doolittle that led per se, this raid to fly over Japan and bomb a lot of their factories. Okay? But typically, bombers are meant to take off from, don't say the ground, okay? Bombers are meant to take off from where? Landing or airstrips, okay? But in the movie, the bombers take off from where? Aircraft carriers. They are not designed to do that. Why not? The payload that bombers have to carry are way too heavy. Okay? So one of the things that happens, okay, how do you try to make that bomber get off of the aircraft carrier? What did they do in the movie?
Give it as much room as possible and give it a boost.
So I wouldn't say give it a boost, but anywhere where there's weight that you can take off of that plane, you strip it off of there. Oddly enough, okay, one of the things, if you know anything about these bombers, what does it have for defenses? Do you know? You have two side gunners. You have a turret on the bottom. You have a machine gun in the back, okay? So just by probably getting rid of the turret and then getting rid of the two side machine guns, I understand that's maybe not a lot, but you pick up a 50 caliber machine gun that's probably pretty close to,
It makes a difference.
yeah, probably close to 200 pounds possibly for each. So there's 400. You get rid of the turret, that's maybe about 1,000 pounds. So you start stripping some of that weight off of there. It's going to make it easier to get off of that aircraft carrier. Okay. This, on the other hand, okay, I like to refer more so as adaptive radiation. Or no, let's wrap this up here, okay? Even though these are warm-blooded, what are some typical types of birds that you can think of? Okay?
Robins.
Owls.
Bird, duck.
Flamingo. Chicken. Turkey.
Chicken.
Duck.
Eagle.
Ow. Dog. Oh, what's that?
Okay, that's enough, okay? So, yes, Jerry back there is an owl. What are some characteristics? Yes, we know it's an avian characteristic, but these are all going to start creating their own different types of niches, that's what you actually call it, where they're actually going to be successful. In order to do that, think of food gathering, okay?
Owls are nocturnal.
And it could be whether they're diurnal or nocturnal, okay? So the best way to look at this is, are these carnivorous?
Yes.
Okay. What about doves? Still makes them carnivores. Okay. And then robins, don't they eat worms? Okay. Then what about ducks? They probably eat fish. And I don't know, maybe they're omnivores too. But one of the things I see that maybe we should have put up here, maybe something like this here. Okay? So what would this have? How would this be different than these animals other than their size? Yeah, they're not a carnivore. So what's going to be different that allows them to be this?
They have
So it's their beak that's going to have a different design for each and every one of these.
Their beak and hook.
These are,
You just study
These
birds
are.
at home.
okay?
hey,
All right. Very sharp. Who was that? Yes. Okay. All right. So now, one of these, I like to call this more so adaptive radiation. Okay. So what we mean by that, could,
Man.
I probably didn't need to go that far over. And I'm not sure whether I need to go over in that direction. These two probably would have been enough. Because one of the things that we've said before is that, okay, when we're talking about cats, okay, what type of cat might we,
Siamese.
no, we're not talking about domesticated cats.
House cat.
That's domesticated. Okay. What about some of these then?
Pink bear.
Teddy bear.
I'm the
Care Bears.
big fat baby.
Okay? One of the things, do these have anything in common? They're all carnivorous. They're mammals. What about their teeth?
Sharp teeth.
Okay, they're all going to have canines. But do they live in the same environment? No, not by a long shot. Okay?
No.
What about snow leopards and polar bears?
Snow leopards are more like.
They're in higher elevations, you could say, snow leopards. Yeah. I mean, yes, it's going to be a cold environment, but when it's cold, it's more so cold because of it's in northern, latitudes, where snow leopards are colder because they're higher in elevation. To me, that's two different concepts. Yes, it's both cold, I get that, but not for the same reason that you're thinking. But you are thinking. That's a good attribute to have. Okay. Do they all have claws? Yes, they do. Okay? So what happens is these animals all start to pop up because they're living in different types of environments. You need to be able to meet the demands of that environment, especially if you are in cold environments. Okay? Now, the last thing that we want to talk, they show a diagram of, in figure 6 on page 425. Okay? Those are what we call homologous structures as well, because each and every one of those limbs is used for what? Whether it's a human, a horse, a cat, a porpoise, or a bat. They're used for movement. Okay? Now, you could say that of a human, we should have eliminated that. We should have just used the other 4. Okay? But when we talk about analogous structures, okay, that's a little different than homologous structures because there is no common ancestor when it comes to an analogous structure. So think of birds and arthropods. So when you think of a bird, what's the first characteristic besides feathers? How do they get around? They've got wings. Do arthropods have wings?
Depends on the day.
You got to think of a specific arthropod.
I don't know. An octopus.
What's an arthropod?
Arthur.
Those are the fish thingies?
They've got armor on the outside.
Turtle.
Oysters.
Or what's the
Flying
question?
An
armadillo.
arthropod.
What about them?
You're gonna, once I tell you, you're gonna say, I knew that.
Armadillo.
Snake giraffe.
I thought I heard it, but I don't know if it was correct. A beagle? Beetle. Beetles are insects. Those are arthropods. But it's not the right arthropod that we're looking at. Because what can a bird have in common with an arthropod? If birds got wings, what type of arthropods got wings? Okay? Butterflies, some of the insects. Okay? Those do not have a common ancestor. Here, you can trace each and every one of these roots back to a common ancestor.
Are fireflies arthropods?
They are. Okay? But when it comes to analogous structures, not homologous, but analogous structures, you have the same type of, let's say, function, but without the same ancestor. Okay? That's correct. Flight has evolved 4 times in the geological record. The first one was the dinosaurs. Then the insects. Then take a guess. The birds. Then finally the bats. Yes. Okay. All right. I think that's enough for today. We'll catch up to you next time.